Okay, guys. So again, we're very fortunate to be welcomed by Joe Guinchard on the call. A very close friend of mine who's come through the youth system in England with football, with soccer, played at Millwall at a very good level, and went out to the States and played at Carey University in the NAIA. Captained the team after I left, and again had a fantastic success at Carey, and has now got on to bigger and better things in Denmark and playing over there at a very high level. So Joe, nice to have you in a call, mate. Again, if you could just introduce yourself to everyone and tell everyone kind of about your journey and about yourself and where you've come from and what you've done, that would be fantastic, pal.
Yeah, as you said, I'm from London. I came through academies at Reading. Then I moved on to the youth team in Millwall after a couple of years there. Things obviously didn't work out in that, so I came back to England. I didn't know what to do, so ended up going out to the States. Had good success out there. And then I ended up moving out to Denmark once I graduated, and that's where I'm at now.
Great stuff, and obviously you talk about you're in London, mate. Obviously everyone knows the capital, or the best city in the world. What part of London are you from, mate? Where's your kind of geographical location in terms of London?
The closest point I'll say Wembley, near the Wembley area. So
great stuff, and obviously
a good footballing background there.
Brilliant, man. Obviously, you talk about your roles. I mean, you've played for Reading, you've played for Millwall, you've gone out to Carey, and you've gone out to obviously Denmark now, and you're playing. I mean, what roles have you had in the game, Joe? And obviously, can you kind of give people insight into what the roles entail? Because obviously, as a player that's come through the system like you with youth team, for example, it's not just football. You kind of have to do the jobs and kind of cleaning the kit and preparing things. Just kind of tell people, mate, that the kind of roles you've had in football from youth team days to Carey days, and obviously now going out to Denmark.
Yeah, as you say, it's not just football. When I was at Millwall, we had various different jobs to do for the first team, like cleaning the boots, getting all the equipment out for the first team, and just being run-around boys for them. And even had to go to college one day a week as well, training full-time at Millwall, and we still had to do college. So it's not just the football, as you say. It is quite tough.
How did you find that, Joe? Obviously, I mean, going out to the States where it is kind of student athlete and you're going through that stage. I mean, how did you find it where in England where the school isn't maybe as high, but you've got it kind of incorporated into your football? Would you say it was tough to do, and did it kind of set you up well for the next progression in terms of going out to America with Carey?
Yeah, in a way, yeah, it sets you up because, as you say, in America you do schoolwork and you do football at the same time. So when being at Millwall and doing that one day a week, it kind of sets you up a little bit, not too much, because as you say, it's only one day a week. But and obviously in America it's every day, so it does get you ready, but it's not quite as the same intense workload.
Of course, man. Obviously, linking it back to the start, man. I mean, what kind of first made you get involved in football and soccer, mate? Obviously, being from London, it's our religion, mate. And obviously, I know you're kind of from the same kettle of fish with me in terms of you live and breathe it. What kind of made you get involved in the game and why?
Yeah, back home, football is the main sport. A lot of people play it, and since I could walk, I was kicking a ball. Started playing just Sunday league teams at about 5-6 years old, so I've been playing literally all my life, and tried football, and that's all I've done really.
No, great stuff, man. Obviously, when did you realise you wanted to take it even further and become a pro? I mean, when was it that you kind of found you were good at it? Because obviously there's a difference between playing it and being good at it. When did you realise that you wanted to be a pro, and kind of what pathways did you take, mate, to kind of get into the pro game at Reading and Millwall, and how did you manage to get there and really kind of then decide to push on with it all?
Well, every kid back home wants to be a professional footballer growing up. I'd say I probably, as soon as I started playing and I realised what you can do in football, I wanted to be a professional.
No, great stuff, man. That's fantastic insight. Obviously, you that desire and that hunger to go and play it and do it. I mean, in terms of coming out to the States, I mean, what advice would you give to anyone looking to kind of have a career in the game and anyone looking to kind of get involved in pro football, in collegiate football, and obviously now out in Denmark playing? I mean, what kind of things would you say they need to be able to do to go and get what they want from the game?
you've got to work hard. You've got to put 100% in everything you do, and try and out-train more than anyone else. You just got to smash it, try and be 100% in everything you do. You can't half-heart anything in the game, because there's thousands or millions of players who want to play and become professional, and there's only a small percentage that can actually get to the top level. So if you want to get to the top level, you have to put 100% in everything you do.
No, it's great stuff, mate. Obviously, you talk about that work rate, Joe. You talk about, obviously, we're going to speak later about that, the ability level and obviously mentality. I mean, obviously, people in the States maybe don't realise how it is a global game, mate. And obviously, being from London, where it literally is, everyone plays it, and the level is very, very high, even at somewhere like school or recreational level. I mean, how good would you say you have to be, Joe, to kind of get anywhere in the game in London, let alone to kind of get out to the States and where you've got to now?
Yeah, you have to have some good ability really to play. As you say, there's thousands of kids out there who are wanting to do it, and you've got to be good. And it's not just on the field. You've got to be good at. You've got to, off the field. You've got to have a good diet and do all the right things off the field to enhance your performance on the field.
No, that's great stuff, man. Obviously, in terms of yourself now, Joe, I mean, you've gone through Millwall, you've gone through the States, you've gone out to Denmark. I mean, is where you are now kind of plan A, or if it isn't, I mean, what was plan A, mate, when you kind of set out, and how did you adjust and adapt, Ginch, when obviously things changed and you kind of deal with your setbacks and get out onto success? Because obviously what you've gone and done, mate, is superb. So obviously to have dealt with, the breakdown at Millwall, and obviously going out to the States and doing what you did out there with Carey, and now getting out to Denmark. I mean, how did you deal with plan A, and how did you deal with the setbacks that come of it to get where you are now?
Yeah, plan A would have been to play professional at home and play at the highest level. Obviously, it didn't work out. I had chances at Reading, didn't work out there, and Millwall didn't work out there. So my plan B was to go out to America, and that's what I done. And I ended up, luckily enough, getting a breakout out there. Met a few people, and put me in contact, and ended myself out in Denmark.
No, brilliant stuff. And obviously, we talk about the scouts and that. Obviously, back home, there's the scouts everywhere looking for players to get into the pro game. And how about getting out to the States, mate? Obviously, in terms of getting out to the US, how did you find your path? And obviously, talk about mates helped you out. I mean, I know myself that it's not just about who you know, it's about really kind of sorting the visas out, the SATs. You've got to kind of get everything right to get out to the States. I mean, what was your pathway out to the States, mate?
Well, when I knew that I wasn't getting a professional contract at Millwall, worked with an educational company called the LFE, and they shared a few ideas out to go. I could have went to Spain, to Sweden to play for a couple of months on like a trial, but that was nothing long term. So another option they gave me was to go out to the States. So I thought that was the best option for me. I could play football every day. Still, that's what I was doing that at Millwall, and I still wanted to play every day. So I thought States would be the best opportunity to carry on playing every day. So they put me in contact with like an agency back home where you can showcase videos and scouts can come and watch you and play, and ended up playing there, had a few teams, and ended up at William Carey.
No, great stuff. And obviously, in terms of taking it back to Millwall days, mate, and obviously then going through the systems, what would a typical day look like, mate, as a youth team plan? How would it change going out to the States at Carey and now in Denmark? I mean, what does your 9 to 5 look like, Joe, in terms of, what it was at Millwall in the youth team days, and then obviously at Carey as a collegiate player, as a student athlete, and now at Denmark as a pro footballer, which you are now, mate?
9 to 5 day at Millwall being a youth team player is a lot harder than everyone thinks, because you don't just go and play football. Would wake up, have to be at training at 7:30 in the morning, do a gym session before training a few times a week, and then, as I said earlier, you have to help do things with the first team. You have to get their equipment ready, and you have to get their training session ready to a certain extent, and then you got to go and train yourself. And then some days you have to do schoolwork if you didn't finish it on the day we had allocated. Sometimes you have 2 sessions a day and a gym session. So it could be tough days sometimes as a youth team player.
No, great stuff. And obviously linking out to Carey, how to differentiate? I mean, what's it like kind of 9 to 5 at a collegiate team? And obviously been in a different country. How did you adapt to that change? And what are the changes from kind of going from youth team to collegiate football, soccer on a day-to-day basis?
There's some similarities, as you say, as you're playing every day still. But being a collegiate athlete, you have to do more schoolwork. He's not just doing the football every day. He's doing schoolwork every day. You got assignments to complete. And it's tough to juggle both things. You're missing classes. You have to catch up with classes. It can be quite difficult, quite stressful. Because you're not just the normal student. You also got to worry about playing football at the same time.
No, of course, but obviously, people are starting to learn now. Obviously, the podcast I've done with Barry Farrell, who you know very well, and Pedro Villarreal and John Dix and his son Sheldon. Obviously, out in the States, it is student athlete, mate. And obviously, the schoolwork does come first. And just kind of stress to people, Joe, how important it is for that schoolwork, because literally it is a case, mate, where if you don't pass your classes, you do not play, don't you, mate? There's no two ways about it in that respect with the schoolwork.
Yeah. As you say, you don't pass, you don't play. I kind of learned that the hard way. In my first year out there, I didn't really take the schoolwork properly, because all I wanted to do, the main reason I came out there was to play football. So that's really my main focus was. And my first few months out there, I didn't pass all my classes, so I kind of learned that the hard way. But you have to realise, which I did, you do have to pass. You have to do well in the classroom to even step foot on the field. So in a way, the schoolwork is more important than the football.
Now, of course, when obviously as a player that I played with alongside, I mean, there's no doubt in your football ability, mate, your soccer ability. But in terms of school, Joe, I mean, what was you like in England with schoolwork? And obviously, when you were kind of finding that it was that important out in the States, how did you deal with it? I mean, what kind of support network and system did you find yourself in to make sure that you did pass the classes to be able to go and play? I mean, who did you reach out to make sure those classes were taken care of?
Yeah, well, at home I was just an average student at home. I passed my classes. Didn't have flying A-star grades, but I did all right in school. But then in America, it's the school I went to was a nice small school, so the teachers got to know you on a personal basis. They could help, and they're easy to reach out to, so they could help you, and they were understandable. Being a student athlete as well, you do have other commitments, and you do have a lot of time playing sport. So they were quite helpful, understandable, had good coaches as well. They made sure that we stayed on top of the schoolwork, and they made sure that we had all the help possible.
No, great stuff. And obviously, being a student athlete, we talk about the schoolwork there. In terms of kind of earning money out, Joe, obviously, with guys are looking out to come out to the States. I mean, with the student visa, I mean, they're only allowed a certain amount of time to work on campus, aren't they? I mean, never mind actually off campus. People don't realise that the student F1 visa you get allocated isn't a work visa. It's a purely student visa. But in amongst that, you get allocated 20 hours a week. And just talk about some of the roles that you did, Joe, around the campus to earn yourself money and kind of help you kind of earn a living, and obviously how you're paid for your studies and the kind of scholarships you were offered.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate. My parents were very supportive. They helped me out financially as well. But when I was out in the States, I had two jobs on the campus, one was in the student rec centre at the gym. Had 10 hours there a week, it's not much, and then I had another job was with the football. Which I had to paint the lines on the field. So they were my two jobs to help me earn money.
No, great stuff. And obviously, you talk about youth team days in terms of kind of doing the equipment. I mean, I suppose doing that really set you up for those roles you found yourself in to earn the money out at Carey. I mean, in terms of that mentality, Joe, I know you well, and obviously you're a London boy and you're very kind of hardy, even though you're a great lad to talk to. I mean, what would you say about mentality, Joe, in terms of football and soccer, and how important is mentality, and what kind of mentality do you need to succeed in anything, let alone football?
Yeah, you got to have the right mentality. You got to be positive. You got to be when you're playing. You got to be fearless. You got to have you can't be worried about what others think, what your coach is going to say to you. You can't be worried about mistakes. I feel like if you play with no worries, then you have no worries on the pitch, and I feel like that's when you play as your best. So I'd say you have to have a strong mentality and just be positive.
No, of course, mate. Great advice. And obviously, in terms of that positive mindset, I mean, I know that things do frustrate you. You're a winner yourself, mate, being in a successful team at Carey. What kind of things would you say frustrate you most, Joe? And what's the reason for those frustrations? Again, how do you deal with those, mate?
When you're not playing your best, that's probably the most frustrating thing, because you know what you can do. You can't play well all the time. Like, there are days where you do have an off day and you're not playing as good as you want to, and things aren't coming off. And it goes back to having that strong mentality. When things aren't working, you've got to find a way around it and adapt.
No, of course, mate, you're right. Obviously, there's ups and downs through anything. You have to find the way to adapt. And I mean, in terms of parents and players, mate, I mean, what kind of advice would you give out to parents who are looking to kind of get the best for their kids? I mean, there's a difference between pushing your kids and obviously breaking them, because obviously, you know, young players are just like adults and they do reach breaking point. I mean, what advice would you give to parents who are trying to get the best for their kids? And what were your parents like with you, mate?
I'd say best advice was don't put a ton of pressure on your kids. Because as you say, they do feel it and they do come under pressure. I'd say be positive. If they don't play a bad game, don't shout at them, don't put them down. You just got to be positive with them all the time. And that's how I had. My parents were always supportive, always positive. If I didn't have a bad game, I didn't get in the car after the game and they didn't shout at me, nothing. They just said, unlucky, next game, move on.
No, of course, mate. Great stuff. As a player that's come through it yourself, mate, what advice would you give to players who are looking to kind of get a career in the game and they're looking to really kind of progress? What advice would you give to them to enable them to go and achieve their goals?
100%. Put 100% in everything you do. Mm-hmm. You got to make sacrifices. You can't. A lot of your friends might not play football, might not have the same ambition or same goals as you. You're growing up, your friends might be going out to parties and socialising and stuff, and sometimes you have to miss out on them things and sacrifice that. Sometimes you might have to go play more football, or you've got to miss out on the parties. You got to just be committed to football. If that's something you really want to do, then you've got to put everything into it.
No, of course, man. Again, someone like yourself, I mean, I'm sure, like me, you've seen players who have got all the ability, but as you say, that mentality and that discipline they lack. And in terms of the game itself, mate, as someone who's captained a very successful team as you did at William Carey, and obviously someone that played alongside me, and we had a great partnership together in the heart of the Carey defence. I mean, what main things would you say are important? We can kind of talk about diet, we can talk about athleticism, we can talk about ability. You know, what kind of things would you say make up a player, and how important are the likes of diet, ability, and athleticism?
I think they're massive. Diet is key. That's what you're fueling your body. That's how it helps you perform on the pitch. And the same with a gym or working out or whatever you want to call it. You gotta put in the hours outside of the pitch as well to get the best into it. No,
definitely, mate. Great stuff. Moving on to Denmark now, Joe. Obviously, you did great to graduate Carey, and again, you did great with your plan on the pitch there. You talk about how you kind of got yourself out to Denmark and how you're playing at a level there. Just tell everyone now, mate, what kind of level you are playing at in Denmark and how you managed to get yourself out there post William Carey University.
I'm playing in the third division out in Denmark. So it's one of the higher leagues out here. I was quite fortunate, actually. I met a coach out there I played for in the summer. And he was from Denmark. And he knew I was graduating and things were up in the air. Didn't really know what to do after. I've always wanted to carry on playing football. And I thought, once I graduated college, I thought that would be the end of it. And he asked me my plans, and he suggested, he had an idea that I could go out into his home country and play. He had a few contacts. He ended up putting me in contact with a few people over in Denmark. Ended up flying out for a trial, and luckily things went well, and now I'm here.
Great stuff. And obviously, what part of Denmark are you in now, Ginch? For those that don't know where exactly you are in Denmark.
I'm down in the south in a small city called Tønder.
Nice, man. What's the way of life like out there? Obviously, culturally coming from England and going out to the States and then going out to Denmark. I mean, you're becoming a well-travelled young man. Obviously, in terms of the cultural differences, what differences are there, and what have you kind of found, from those differences?
Yeah, it's very different because I'm from London, big city, a lot of things going on, and now I'm out in Denmark. It's obviously a smaller country, and I'm stuck out in the country a little bit, so there's not so much going on. So some days it is hard because I do get bored, and There's not a lot going on. And obviously they speak a whole new language which I'm yet to learn. So that is a bit of a struggle at times. So I'll say that is probably the main thing. So when I'm playing and the boys are speaking Danish and I haven't got a clue what they're saying, and even at training when the manager's explaining things, I have to get someone to translate, or I just have to watch and try and pick up on what they're doing.
It's interesting to say about the language. Obviously, we're very English speaking, and coming out to the States was a big draw for a lot of us English boys, where the language is the same, even though there's obviously slight different twangs. I mean, you've touched on it there, mate, in terms of getting the translations when the manager is talking in Denmark. I mean, how have you dealt with that, mate? How have you dealt with the whole language barrier? Because it is a barrier that you have to kind of overcome. And obviously, what ways, are you finding to overcome them in terms of translation and kind of... Does it affect your performance massively not being able to talk the same language, or have you kind of slotted in where football is the universal language as such?
Yeah, it is tough because there is a lot of things I miss out on, like little bits of information or things the manager wants to do sometimes, and if he doesn't speak directly to me, then sometimes I do miss out on that because obviously I don't understand the language. But when you're playing football, it is, as you say, universal language. You kind of just pick up on things, and I'm quite fortunate that everyone in the team does speak English. So when they're shouting instructions on the pitch to me, they will obviously say it in English. So it's not too bad when I'm playing, but off the field is a bit of a struggle.
No, of course, mate. I mean, it's a different culture and it's a different way of life. I mean, what stories would you say stick out in your mind, Joe, of your experience you've had so far in the game and obviously travelling around? I mean, what stories stick out the most in terms of your soccer career so far?
I'm not too sure. It's, everything is on the pitch. Everyone speaks English to me, so I haven't had too many eventful stories.
in terms of the US, mate, obviously Denmark, you've only been there for a few months. In terms of US and Millwall, kind of, what stories stick out most? Where I know you played with the likes of John Marquis and obviously Jack Stacey now, who's at Bournemouth. I mean, tell us a little bit what those boys are like, and obviously the success they've got and got. I mean, it isn't. Luck does play a part in terms of you need a little bit of luck to get there, mate, don't you? But it's not all about luck. And again, just tell us how good the likes of John Marquis, who's now kind of the number one kind of scorer in the league in England in terms of football league, and Jack Stacey, who's now playing Prem soccer at Bournemouth. Just tell us what those boys are like and the kind of things they had to deal with to get to the level they've got to.
Yeah, well, I grew up playing with Jack Stacey at Reading. I had him play with him a few years, and you could tell from a young age that they stuck out. More than your average player. They're doing more than your average player as well, and you could see that on the pitch. And so John Marquis, he was a first team player when I was in the youth team. I didn't have too much to deal with him, but whenever a youth team player came up to a first team player, they always gave good advice. They're always supportive, and I think that goes a long way for a young player trying to break into the first team.
No, definitely, mate. Great stuff. Obviously, if you wasn't involved in football and soccer, mate, I mean, I know that football's your life, and it's probably a bit of a silly question because you always find ways to stay in the game. But if you weren't involved in football, soccer, I mean, what would you be doing with yourself, man? How would you kind of use your time?
Well, that's a good question. As you say, I've only known football, but if I didn't play, I'd probably be end up working on a building site with my family. So I've had the easy route or the better route of playing football.
No, great stuff. Obviously, it just shows, I mean, someone like yourself who's come out of London, you've managed to set it yourself in the youth team, obviously didn't work there in terms of playing A. You've gone out to the States, you've done great over in the States, you've got a degree, you've now gone out to Denmark. I mean, it just shows how soccer, with it being the number one game, in the world, you can kind of take it wherever you want. And I mean, as a kid, I know that my dad, we've had chats about this before, where my old man would say it's important to have a trade, and even Barry Farrell was talking about how his dad was saying that you need to be able to do a job that you love. And obviously with football, soccer not really being considered as a job, it can be taken around the world. And I mean, have you looked into becoming a coach, Joe, after your playing days end? I mean, obviously you're still only young, mate, you're still 20, 23, 24. I mean, what are you looking to do once your playing days kind of finish, mate, and where do you see yourself going after?
Yeah, once I'm done, I definitely want to stay in the game. I would like to come back to the States at some point and try my hand at coaching over there. That's my number one option, and I hope that works. If not, I'll try and find another way to stay in the game. If I can't get back to the States, then I'll probably end up going home back to England and trying to coach over there.
No, great stuff. And obviously, your experiences have set you up, mate, for life. And obviously, you maybe come out to the States as a boy and whatnot, and you've kind of become a man now, pal. Obviously, I witnessed that firsthand with our playing days together, and two people who are from the same area but very different personalities. I mean, just talk now about how you kind of led the team, mate, after I kind of left, and the kind of the way we kind of set things up in getting success at Carey. I mean, how did you then kind of take the team on? Because you become the captain, you kind of stepped into my shoes as such and took it on, and you had a fantastic season. Like was it last season, the season before, after I kind of went, you guys really took on the mantle as such and stepped into it and done great. And just in terms of being the captain, mate, how did you assume that responsibility, and how did you then kind of go and ensure that the new guys coming in would kind of go on and carry on with that success?
Yeah, the first year the year I was captain, we had a great season. I think we had 20 wins and 1 loss maybe. So we had a really good season. But being the captain, you're the voice of the team for the players. You have to try and be the vocal point of the team and get your points across from the players to the coaches. You're kind of the middleman. So you've got to be you have to listen to everyone. You have to take in everyone's opinions and you've got to make everyone happy, really, or do the best you can. You've got to try and make everyone feel welcome. All the new boys, you have to make them feel welcome, make them feel comfortable, so they can be the best they can be on the pitch.
No, I totally agree. And obviously, you've done a fantastic job with that after I kind of left, and credit to you. I mean, the way you kind of led the team and took it forward. And as you say, I mean, it's hard to kind of please everyone, but that mindset, mate, and that winning mentality, as you say, football is the universal language. And once you get kind of boys in, you get embedded in, you know, it becomes kind of easy to get players on the same level because you're all together so tight. And I can just talk about the relationship that you would form with the foreign guys, especially. I mean, obviously, youth team, you become like brothers, even though you're your local lads. I mean, when you go out to the States, it's more like family, mate, isn't it? I think now in Denmark, I can imagine as well, where, I mean, I haven't been out to Denmark myself yet. I mean, maybe we'll look to come out and see you play, mate, once all everything dies down and whatnot. But just talk about how the relationships you form with people, and obviously your teammates, and how close you become as a group and as units.
Yeah, at Millwall, you become, well, as a youth team, you do come close, but you see each other every day, but you only really see each other at training. Whereas when I was in America, you see them every day training, but some of them you're also living with them. So you're around the boys 24/7. So as you say, they do become like family. You see them every day, you live with them, you see them literally 24/7. So it is really important to create a good, strong bond with them.
No, that's great stuff, mate. Obviously, you know, we've had a good chat here now, mate, for about half an hour and stuff, and you've given great insight. I mean, just to finish the call off, Ginch, I mean, have you got any other points you'd like to make to people? Obviously, we've got players, we've got parents from home and abroad listening. I mean, what kind of advice would you give to people, and kind of how would you leave it in terms of, you know, giving over Joe Guinchard and the success you've achieved? What advice would you give to people listening now?
For players, then as I said numerous times already, you've got to put the work in on and off the field. You've got to put 100% in everything you do. You've got to make a lot of sacrifices, especially when you become around that 17, 18, 19 years of age. You've got to make more sacrifices. A lot of your friends will be going out socialising. But if you want to play at the highest level you can possibly play at, then you're going to have to sacrifice a few things and put that extra work in. And for the parents, just be supportive of your kid. Back what they want to do. Don't put them under too much pressure, and just be positive with them.
No, that's great. And obviously, again, there is good advice and bad advice to take. And obviously, that mindset you speak about, where you're able to kind of whittle out the good from the bad. I mean, again, how do you kind of get that, Joe? How is it something you're born with, where you're able to kind of, you know, take the good with the bad, or is it something you learn? And how are you able to kind of distinguish from the good advice to the bad advice? Is it something that develops over experience, or is it something else that you've already got?
Yeah, I mean, experience plays a part. Like as you do more things and you experience more things, you realise what's the right thing and what's the bad thing. So I'd say that's like experience is a huge part, and obviously that just comes with time.
No, great stuff, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate, having you on the call. And obviously with the coronavirus that everyone's experiencing currently, It's different for you being out in Denmark. Just tell everyone what you've been doing, mate, over the last kind of few weeks and few months whilst all this football has died down. How have you kind of survived, mate, out there? What sorts of roles have you found in something? Because obviously now that the visa you're on is different, you are able to kind of work out there, which is great for you. I mean, what kind of ways are you finding to adapt and keep success whilst you can't play football in Denmark?
Yeah, it's been tough. I've been living on my own, so I've had a lot of time to myself. So it does get boring. You just got to find things to do. Go out running. Managed to find myself a job while this is all going over. So just trying to keep them busy, really.
No, great stuff, man. As I say, it's been an absolute pleasure having on the call, mate, and I'm sure that you've definitely inspired a lot of people and made it a lot easier for them to find ways not only into football, soccer in England at a high level, but obviously in the US too and Denmark and beyond. So pleasure having you on the call, mate, and we wish you all the best, Joe.
Cheers, mate. It's good chat with you, mate. Well done.